Welcome back, DCU Classics fans, to the Spectre Creative channel, where we're doing director's commentary on all the waves and releases for the DC Universe Classics line from Mattel. I'm Scott ToyGuru Neitlich, your host, and I was the brand manager for 95% of this line, which is why I'm doing the director's commentary. See how that works? How the guy who worked on it gives the commentary? Anyway. For the most part, DCU Classics from Mattel was released in retail waves, which ranged from 6 to 8 characters, plus a collect and connect figure, and, all the accessories to boot. And they were sold at retail on nifty single-carded blisters with bios on the back and cross-sells and all the cool stuff they don't do on toys anymore. I miss cross-sells, I really do. And of course, when it was time for things like San Diego Comic-Con, we would get to stretch our creative juices and do kind of cool one-off items that wouldn't work at retail, like this cool Lobo who was a bit bigger and had 3D glasses and came with a dog, and yeah. And then, of course, there were also big packs, like 5 packs. I think the biggest pack we had done to date was finding a way to release 5 figures in one pack, which, gosh, today would be like $100, right? Like $25 per figure. Back then they were less expensive, which is how we did them. But we were not going to rest on our laurels one bit with a 5-pack or only getting to do special things at San Diego Comic-Con, because we had MattyCollector.com, an awesome website for selling direct to fans. And this allowed us to do a SKU, which honestly I think is the crowning achievement of the DCU Classics line. I mean, you could point to individual figures being great, and you could definitely point to waves being great, and we had some great Comic-Con items, but if you were going to point to one item that was just wow, it would be the Legion of Superheroes 12-pack that we did only on Matty Collector. Now, there's been a lot of DC figures and a lot of DC packaging over the years. Many companies have had the license to DC, from Kenner to Hasbro to DC Direct to, hey, Spin Master has it now, so does McFarlane. So, everybody gets a chance to do it. And the Legion of Superheroes have been done, mostly by DC Direct. They haven't really creeped into retail that much. While they are such a main team for the DC Universe and a big team, they're kind of not that well known as far as the public. There was a cartoon show that lasted for a while, but I think one of the reasons also they're so big. I mean, there's a lot of members of the Legion of Superheroes. I mean, a lot of members. And Bill Beneke and I, Bill was the designer, and I was the marketing manager, we were very good friends. We became very good friends, and we were both big fans of the Legion of Superheroes. I particularly liked the Jim Shooter stuff that was coming out in 2010, Enemy Rising, I think was the name. Really great trade paperback. So Bill and I had to go from El Segundo, where Mattel is, all the way up to the Warner Brother Consumer Product office in Burbank. And yes, I know, looking at this map, it says that it is, 32 minutes and 28 miles? Well, maybe that's because it's coronavirus time right now, but I mean, this drive would take an hour and a half. This was not a 30-minute drive. California traffic. So we would spend this time talking about the Legion pack, and honestly, we thought it was going to be really easy. We thought, oh, this is great. We'll do 12 heads only, maybe a couple belts and boots, but we could really knock this out with very, very minimal tooling. It wouldn't break the bank, and for with one SKU, we could do very well from a revenue perspective, which is how the company looked at things. They looked at revenue per SKU. So if it didn't cost that much in tooling to do this, because it was only heads, it would work. It would look good on spreadsheets for the company. Well, to say we bit off more than we could chew is an understatement. While, yeah, the tooling was very limited, as Bill said to me at the end of the process, he's like, I didn't think about the fact that I still had to do paint decos and approvals and all of this stuff for 12 different figures. We were just thinking of it from a tooling standpoint would be easy, but it wound up being twice the amount of work for a regular wave. But you know what? A lot of love went into it. I'm glad we did it. Bill really deserves so much credit because he's the one who spent hours and hours on this set. And it came out really beautiful. It did. I mean, the colors popped. Every figure had its own head. New tooling was thrown in where needed for belts or collars, that kind of thing. We had different sizes, we had little figures, we had big figures, we even had a sidekick figure. And again, I want to make sure Bill gets so much credit. I mean, the Horsemen, obviously, for sculpting all this, but they basically sculpted a head for each figure. Bill had to do all the logistic work of putting them together and making sure the paint decos worked, and it was a lot. Claps for him. So this pack shipped on Matty Collector, and because it was a 12-pack and it was really big, it came in a case pack of 1, which you would never really do for retail, but that was the beautiful thing about Matty Collector, is it could allow us, it was a vehicle to do things that wouldn't work at retail. And the packaging was amazing. I mean, major props to the packaging group too, because this, like I said, crowning achievement, it was in figures, it was in scale, by scale, it was with packaging. I mean, this was, by super deluxe package. That's not even the half of it. The whole package folded up to look like the Legion Tower and even Velcroed closed. And it had full color graphics on front, on back. You could display it in package multiple different ways. If you wanted to display it as the Legion Tower, you could do that. If you wanted to open it up and show all the figures off, you could do that too. And it fit so snugly into that one shipper box, so it was easy to ship with it being in mint condition. All right, yeah, and this is how it looked like on the front. You had all 12, 13, we'll get into that, the 13th non-figure. But you had, 12 actual figures, plus a sidekick, plus a role-play ring. I think that's the only role-play item we ever did for DCU Classics. But we'll make sure we get to the ring before this video is up. All the figures had their own individual blister with a bio and like their power call-outs and their symbol all on the side. I mean, it was terrific. Everybody just worked so hard on this pack, and like I said, it wound up being way more work than we expected. We thought again, we'll just slap it together, super easy, low tooling. Well, when you've got to design a unique package and you have to design and actually do deco for 12 different figures, yeah, it winds up being a lot more than you anticipated. And we also kind of thought this would just be a good way to start the Legion of Superheroes, knowing how many characters there were on this team. So really the question wasn't about who made it into the Legion 12 pack. It's actually kind of more about who didn't make it. Because, like I said, Bill and I would be driving up and down to Warner Brothers usually once a week for meetings, maybe every other week, up to Burbank. So we had, 2 hours in the car, give or take, back and forth, and we would spend this time talking about how to do this and which characters to do. We knew off the bat Superboy, Cosmic Boy, Lightning Boy, and Saturn Girl had to be in there because they were, kind of the founding members. More or less. I know Superboy isn't, but as far as their introduction, their first appearance, this was the cover of that issue, and they were kind of grandfathered in, so we knew they were going to go in there. But man, when you're talking about a big team with a big roster, I think Legion of Superheroes maybe X-Men or Avengers, but there was a lot. So we should talk about who didn't make the box set, basically, as opposed to who did. So to start off, Bouncing Boy. A character, personally, I really wanted to get in there, and Bill was all for it too. The problem was there was no way to do him without a lot of tooling. He was, a fully tooled figure, more or less, and we didn't have the tooling budget to do that. This was basically a heads-only pack. But we talked about some creative solutions. We talked about doing him as a ball, and getting a rubber bouncy ball and then decoing the ball to look like Bouncing Boy. But, to Bill's point, his arms did stick out. They weren't flush to the ball, and the legs, too. We couldn't, pulling hair. So Bouncing Boy kind of wound up getting cut. Pharaoh Lad, another one that was, again, I think the list was originally going to be a 15-pack, and then it got scaled down to 12. So, it's who do we cut when we had, our list of 15 characters? And Pharaoh Lad, unfortunately, became one of those that was cut. Probably because, his appearances as a member of the Legion was limited, but it was very memorable. This was from Jim Shooter's original run. Does everyone know that, Jim Shooter was 13 years old when he was writing this, originally in the 60s? He came back in the 2010s to write it again. But, yeah, his original run, he was 13 years old. Crazy! So yeah, Feral Lad, gave his life to save everyone. We thought we should honor him with a figure, and unfortunately we couldn't. Also, girls, women, females, we wanted to do a lot more of the ladies of the Legion. But the problem was every time we added in another girl, once we had to scale it down to 12, looking at who we'd have to cut, we're like, oh, who do we cut? Do we cut Matter Eater Lad? Do we cut Lightning Boy? It's like, do we cut Brainiac 5? There was nobody to cut to add in another girl. So we just kept saying, you know what, we'll get to more girls in the single line later on in a wave, which never happened. So we gave Toy Fair Magazine the exclusive reveal of the Legion pack as part of a bargain to get the cover. Although I always kind of thought the cover was a little dark, but I guess it was supposed to spotlight Superboy there. I remember the first time I saw it, I was like, wow, they went really dark on that cover with the lighting. And then at San Diego Comic-Con, we revealed the whole lineup and all the characters, as well as noting that it would include Prody and a Legion of Superheroes ring that you could wear. And you could decode, Little Orphan Annie's secret messages. No, you couldn't. Nor could you fly. Now, this wasn't our first crack at the Legion. We had done a JLU Legion pack, albeit much smaller, with only 4 characters, mainly because these were the ones that actually showed up on the show. They were on Superboy, or Superman, the animated series. There was a Legion episode. No one had ever done the whole Legion before in toy form. And I think still to this day, no one has. It's kind of a tough team to tackle, especially because, again, it's like so huge. We really would have loved to do more of them. Most of the figures use the basic teen buck. So I'm not going to go through figure by figure because it's basically, like I said, new heads and occasionally a new belt. But, you can see Chameleon Boy and Lightning Lad were literally just a new head on existing teen bucks. Brainiac 5 was one of the only figures that used a different buck. And this was all the Horsemen. They were the ones who did all this design work. And I remember being surprised when I saw them. I'm like, whose body is that? We said you can't tool a full new body. It's why we cut Bouncing Boy from the set. Like, where did you... Oh, it's Captain Cold. I totally didn't realize that at first. Now I do. Well, then now. Then meaning now. When will then be now? Soon. So yeah, Captain Cold got repurposed as Brainiac 5, which, genius. Genius being Brainiac 5 is a genius, and genius being the 4 Horsemen, because they are amazing. So that's how they got Brainiac 5 to look a little bit different and more on model. And then, of course, we had Colossal Boy, who needs to be larger because he's Colossal Boy. So he was kind of the Build-A-Figure of the set that you got all connected already. I'm sorry, the Collect and Connect figure. And he used an existing Collect and Connect figure's base body because we had Atom Smasher, who was essentially your standard male buck, but larger. We obviously couldn't use, a giant robot or a giant zombie monster to build off of, but hey, we had Atom Smasher's body, and that was perfect for doing a tall, huge version character for Legion. And then, of course, Superboy. So this was a real thrill to do because we hadn't done kind of your Silver Age classic smiling Superboy before. We had done 90s Superboy and, all sorts of stuff, but we hadn't done this version. And to make him unique, we gave him a Legion ring molded onto his hand. So he got a unique hand and a unique head. He's one of the only characters that got a unique hand in the entire set. Well, I guess we had to tool up a hand with a ring, but it got used on everybody. So the idea was we would eventually re-release this figure without the Legion ring, and that would be another way to get Superboy out there, but it never happened. So this became the only classic Superboy in all of DCU Classics that ever got released. Another one that was just wow was Matter Eater Lad. Who expected a Matter Eater Lad figure? And the way the Horseman sculpted his face like he's in mid-bite, I don't think that's ever been done before with any action figure. Although I will say, the face looks oddly similar to their sculpt of Guy Gardner that came a couple years later. I know Guy's not chewing food, but every time I have the two of them next to each other, I'm like, it's like the same face, only with different hair. I don't know. Other than that, they really did an amazing job sculpting all of these guys. They all came out so beautiful and so unique. So the 13th figure, in what was scaled back to a 12-pack, was Invisible Kid. And from day one, we knew we were going to do this. Bill and I this was something that hit us while we were on one of our drives together. And we were like, oh, it'd be so funny. We could do an empty molded blister and we'll label it Invisible Kid as if he's in there. And I mean, it'll be funny, but it'll also expand the pack to quote unquote 13 figures. I mean, I know it doesn't count and it wasn't included in the cost. Now, here's the thing. The Hot Wheels group came over one day and saw what we were doing. And like, oh, that's really funny. We should do that with the Invisible Jet. And then they did do that with the Invisible Jet. They actually showed it as a joke on April 4th or April 1st. It's an April Fool's Day, but it got so much like thumbs up, if you will, on the internet that they said, oh, we'll actually make this for Comic-Con. And they even put a little weight in there so it felt like there was actually a car. It wasn't empty. But this was our idea. This was totally Bill's and my idea, and they got it to market first. I remember when they came over and saw it, and we're like, oh my God, we're totally going to do that. I was like, no, we came up with that. That was our cool, funny, awesome, imaginative thing. And they went to market first. They got all the credit, and everyone's like, oh, this is like so genius because they sold an empty blister at Comic-Con. And Bill and I are just like, oh man, they stole our thunder. Like, that was supposed to be our victory party. And I don't want people to think we were copying them. So hey, to correct history, I'm still, I wouldn't say miffed, but Bill and I want our credit. What can I say? So to wrap up the pack, it seemed like a pretty awesome idea to include our first, and I think only, DCU Classics roleplay item, which was the Legion ring. Because, hey, everyone needs a Legion flight ring. Because everybody wants to fly. Well, it doesn't actually let you fly. I wish it did. Then the set would probably cost a lot more. So we had a ring that was sized, I think we did size 9, I want to say. Like, we tried to sort of average what the American male finger was. And so we sculpted an all-original ring. This wasn't like a DC Direct ring that we repurposed or anything like that. And we also included Prody, who I guess you could more or less see was kind of a Legion sidekick, if you will. This was Bill. Bill insisted on having Prody in there, and I was like, hey, I'm all for it as long as we can squeeze into the tooling budget. And we basically have all of the heads and Prody and the Legion ring hand all in one tool. And for the ring, one really cool thing is it's actually coated in 24 karat gold. Now, we didn't do this just to make it valuable or shiny. We did this because we didn't want it to scratch. We knew people were going to want to wear this ring, myself included. And, if it's just coated in, like metallic or, things, it can scratch off over time. And we wanted the ring to last and actually work as a real ring. We didn't want it to vac metalize it and have the vac metal scratch over time. So we spent the extra bucks and we coated it in 24 karat gold. I mean, a very thin layer, obviously. I don't think you're going to be able to pawn this for much, but, it's got real gold in there. There'll be gold in them thar action figure sets, says I. So that way, the ring lasts and the set lasts. And for those who got it on Matty, it did have a small run, but it was, it didn't sell out instantly, but I mean, it did sell out, which was great. Bill made me swear I would never make him do anything like this ever again after we realized how much work it was. And that's why I kind of feel like this was like the ultimate achievement of DCU Classics. Not that we were downhill from this, but this was like the peak, if you will. If you were charting the line and, here we were in the middle of the teens. It went 20 waves. So, this was kind of the peak. And after that, it kind of, sloped down and ended. Was it the greatest thing ever in the history of toys? There are some other really great toys out there. But as far as DCU Classics, I kind of consider this the best single piece we ever did, if you were going to look at one item. Really proud we did it. I love the Legion of Superheroes. I just wish we could have done more of them.